You are listening to Bridging the Gap, the podcast where we talk about businesses going global with the help of localization.
Stay tuned to meet the marketing, product, and software experts that make brands international and learn strategies to speak your customer's language.
Hello, Honsa. How are you doing?
Hey Marta, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
It's very hot in Spain. It's summer already, so just trying to cope with that.
Yeah, it's always a bit shock when it comes.
Yeah.
It's always so sudden.
Yeah. So I was actually playing with ChatGPT, and everyone plays with ChatGPT today, and Claude and things like that, and I was like kind of debating with it because it was getting messy, and he was lying to me. I was trying to look for a song title, and he was just making. I'm saying he, could be a she, it could be an it. I don't know, but he was making it up. Whatever. I just gave him hints, and instead of just searching for the song, he just made it up. That's frustrating.
Maybe that's an opportunity to write that one.
Do you have this experience with like all the AI engines right now? Because I don't know if it's a quirk that I have, but as a journalist, I just hate being lied to. And when I talk to other people, they blindly believe what these engines say to them. So I kind of worry about that, because especially the younger generations.
Yeah, it's definitely reinforcing your ideas and your point of view. That's a debate that has been going on for a couple of months recently. And actually, specifically ChatGPT has become a yes man. So you need to know what to expect, and I would say you need a critique inside your head more than ever. Especially, working from home and staying alone.
Yeah, not having anyone to compare it to.
Yeah, like confront your ideas with.
Yeah, totally. But anyway, I'm still trying to find ways to like use it for automation tasks or any other things that could be actually automated because I have so much manual work and I think it could be valuable, but I don't know. I know you use automations more than I do. I don't know what's your experience with that, and has it like evolved in the last few months because like everything is changing so fast?
Yeah, I would say the automation tools, thanks to AI, are basically living resurrection right now. For example, tools like Zapier or NA10, they've been around for a while, but thanks to AI, they suddenly offer like new exciting capabilities that weren't possible before. And that's something people are experimenting with, and it's really exciting to try it on your own.
Okay, so today we have someone with us that is a developer advocate at Strapi and software engineer, and I'm really sure he has so many insights about automation. Welcome, Paul. Paul Bratslavsky is with us today.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Paul.
Sorry for the sudden introduction. You just entered the chat, and we were here chatting.
Oh, no worries. Awesome. I wasn't sure if you are already recording. I apologize for that.
Yeah,
Abruptly entering.
it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Paul, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, my name is Paul. Obviously, I work for Strapi, which is a headless CMS company. I love it. And I work for the marketing team as a developer advocate. And I help to make cool resources that educate developers on how to build cool things with Strapi.
So, what is actually a developer advocate? Because this was the first time I listened to that.
I don't think anybody knows what it is,
Okay.
but the way I describe it to people, you're the bridge between the community and our developers. And so your goal is to make sure that your community using your product or building projects with Strapi has a good experience. So you listen to their feedback, you create helpful resources to educate them on how to build things faster. And then you also relate that to the engineering team to help them make sure that the community and the engineering team are all in line. But if you ask somebody else, they might give you a different definition because that's the nature of DevRel. But basically, I look at it as trying to make your users or developers' experience much better using your product.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Before you joined in, we were basically like touching the topic of automation and how some tools on the market are basically living a second life because they were around for a while, and with AI, they suddenly have many new exciting capabilities. And I would like to hear from you, how do you see automation in the context of Strapi?
Yeah, I think just in general, automation, especially with AI, is such a hot topic right now. And I think everybody's trying to jump on the bandwagon to automate everything. And I think one of the things people need to think about is like, what are your goals and what are you really trying to achieve with automation? Because some people look at it and as like, oh, I'll automate everything and I could be one person company, but that's usually not how it works because you have many moving parts and you want to automate things in a way that make you more productive. And I listened to one of the previous podcasts where you talked a lot about like localization, content management, and a lot of people kind of talked about this idea of like, you know, you have AI, so everybody thinks of making everything with AI and creating content with AI. And I know somebody mentioned how one of the frustrating aspects of search or doing something is you find some content and you're like, oh, I'm going to learn something good. And then you see that it's written by AI and you get frustrated. You're like, oh, this is stupid. Why are people using AI to automate stuff? And the truth is, there's ways of doing it like correctly. One of the approaches we like to take at Strapi is that you always have human in the loop. And the idea is whatever automation you do, like the final say, the final approval, the final word is done by a human. And I think from our experience at Strapi, and I'll tell you more on how we use automation in a little bit, but I feel like there are so many big companies that also use AI automation, especially for content generation, as some people might be surprised because we're used to finding the bad articles. And I think when you find good articles that were helped by AI, maybe that was the research phase, maybe it was the fact-checking phase, you might not know that it was written with AI because it was well done and checked by the person. And so a lot of people might be surprised of how much content automation and something called programmatic SEO, where you automate part of that process as part of your SEO strategy to build organic traffic. And so I think there's a lot of discussions in that space.
I completely agree with you, actually, because there's a tendency of relating bad content or filler content with AI content. And actually, now people are starting to get the grip on how to use it correctly, and having a human fact check and having a human prepare something worthwhile, worth a read, you know? So I feel like we are consuming more AI content than we actually know.
Yeah, I think so. And I would love to like hear like from your standpoint, like what your experience been with like AI content. Do you think like what companies are doing it well, what companies are not doing well, and what do you think it means for the future of content? Because one of the things we noticed is we create a lot of blog posts, but now a lot of the users, when they go on Google and type in a question, the first thing that comes up is that AI generated response. And so do we optimize now for people? Or do we optimize now for the machine that trains that AI to answer that question, regardless if it's ChatGPT or any other one of those companies?
Well, personally, I think this is the same as SEO. Like there's a few technical guidelines that you should know so you can optimize your content. But in the end, the content of the article, the pieces, or whatever you are sharing, whatever type of content in any format, it has to be useful for the user. It has to answer questions. And possibly, at least in our sector, in B2B marketing, I think the important thing is to just provide with case studies, with examples, with things that people can understand and use in their daily business. So in the end, the content has to be useful and it has to be human. Otherwise, they will click and they will go in 2 seconds, you know? So you can use those technical tips. I've been digging into GEO and how you can optimize your content so AI sees it. But ultimately, the bottom line is the content has to be good and has to be useful and human. Otherwise, you will not engage with it. But that's my take, personal take.
Yeah, I will just continue from here. I think that in the last few years, AI in general polluted the internet a bit. And let's say we're still figuring out our ways in which we can decide whether the content is good or not. And ultimately, as you say, Marta, I believe that we will again like converge to the point where people will value good content and good insights, valuable information, and we'll still need to figure out the ways to actually filter out the noise.
Mm-hmm.
and we're somewhere in the middle, so it's hard at this point.
Yeah, and you make a great point. You need to make content for people, especially something that answers that question or brings value. And so a lot of people, when they think of automation, they think of it all or nothing. Just like translations, they think all or nothing. But you could start bit by bit, if you're translating your website, your content, same thing with like automation and content. You could find pieces where it makes sense to automate and do that. One of the things we found in Strapi is we used to and still have Write for the Community program where we like to get our community involved, writing articles. We also write a lot of articles internally, which are very technical, and we really spend a lot of time and effort to make those be the best content possible. But as SEO, some people want to rank for some long tail keywords, and a lot of times in that sense is just get a lot of good content. Maybe it's listicles, maybe it's comparison articles that hit that long tail keyword, and you get the volume out there, so you're still getting traffic being driven to your website, but it's not your main core content. And so I think with automation, instead of thinking let's automate everything, it's fine, what is the return on investment of the stuff you're making? If we're writing very technical content, it needs to really follow the due diligence. It has to be made by humans. We really need to approve. But then on the other side, it's we're building these top of the funnel listicle articles more for discovery phase type of content. Maybe the research part of it or the outline could be automated by AI, and then the human fills in the blanks or reviews the final drafts, makes all the necessary edits, and then that content could be automatically published to your website. And so that way it allows a smaller team to get more content out there. Because one of the things we noticed, if you're competing on SEO, volume does mean something. So if someone is posting more frequently, they get noticed more often. And we work with a company called GrowthX, and they use a tool called AirOps, really cool if you haven't checked it out, for content automation. And I was really surprised actually how many big companies are using programmatic SEO and automated content creation. When I said their names, you'd be surprised. You'd be like, oh my God, they do that as well. And what I've noticed is that if everybody else is doing it, how do you stay competitive if you're doing everything manually? And that's the question that I would want to ask you as well.
Well, I think it also depends on what your goals as a company are. Because this might work for big platforms, big companies, but maybe a smaller startup wants to just have visibility in a specific area, So it depends. But as you say, I think it's a balance between both. You don't have to automate everything, but it could be good that you learn ways to do it. I don't know if Honza has to say anything about this, but I have a question about how companies that use Strapi use the automation features, because I imagine it depends on the kind of company, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think there's a question of return on investment and how much effort to put into. One of the things that I love about Strapi, we allow folks to get started very easily. We have our community edition, which you could self-host, start free. And then as you grow and your business grows, Strapi will grow with you because we allow you to customize pretty much everything. And the point that I like there is the fact that you could start based on your needs and decide where things fit. So when someone's starting out, they really have to identify what are their goals, what they're trying to do, and try to focus on the most important things. And in terms of automation with Strapi, I think because it's easy to get started, but because it's highly customizable, what we allow folks to do in Strapi is build plugins to extend the Strapi ecosystem. So for instance, we have localized plugin that was built by Localazy, which is amazing. For instance, for me, manually translating content, I don't want to spend time, maybe my team size is small. You find a plugin, Localazy, you do all your translations, you have the options to do it automatically, and you save a lot of time. You automate that process away. So now I don't need to have many people. I could have one dedicated person that could review the translation. Same with content. What we've noticed something on our team, one of the things we had a hard time doing is we write content, but we want to redistribute it to a bunch of different platforms. We have, your social, you have dev.to, maybe you want to share something there, maybe Medium. So we made a plugin that after we write the content, with one easy click allows you to automate that boring manual deployment process that we used to do physically by humans. Okay, let me move my content here automatically. And I think the goal for automation is not to replace the human, but think of what are the most boring parts that people hate to do, and just automate those pieces first, so you actually have a much more pleasant experience doing your work.
100%.
Yeah, you actually moved a little bit from the topic, and I wanted to ask you about the automation itself. You actually partially answered it. I was wondering where do you start? Because there are so many options right now. Like if you look at any company, you could see processes that can be automated. And you already mentioned that, of course, you need to start with a goal. You need to start somewhere. And the second part of the answer is that you mentioned start with the things that people hate doing the most. Is there anything else, like a, let's say, few steps approach that you could give people to actually start automating things in the content area?
So for us, whenever you start, you have to decide, is there a tool that works that you could use rather than building something from scratch? Because that will save you a lot of time down the road. So for us, we use a tool called AirOps. Something similar to that could be N8N or any other similar platforms. And N8N and both like AirOps, they have Strapi integration, which allows you to automatically either create, update, delete content from Strapi. So what we're able to do is build these automated workflows for specific tasks. Like one flow we have, for instance, we do a lot of video content, and sometimes rewriting that video content into a blog post, why start from scratch if you could have an automated process which will create an outline of what the video was about, add some basic notes for you, and then you could continue writing the content. So we have a workflow which basically will take the transcript from the video and create an outline, and you could make it as complex as you want. For instance, what you can do is you could do a script that will basically test a bunch of titles and see which titles are more SEO friendly, and it will give you 10 best titles. Same thing with the outline. So it really depends on what you want to automate. But for us, it's taking things that we used to do manually and try to replace them with these mini AI steps or just automation steps. And for us, we do use AirOps because, again, building something from scratch is sometimes like long-term goal, it's not the best output, because one of the things you want to do is be productive as fast as possible. But from content automation, we do headline ideas, we do research. So sometimes it'll be like, we are considering writing topics like for these articles. Can you find similar articles that were written that we could use as like research, or kind of see what other people are talking about in our space, and then see what can we add extra to that conversation.
So what do you think is the biggest barrier that prevents people from starting automating today?
I think it's just, there's so much, I talk to so many different people, and some people are, in a different part of their business, and some people have this fear of automation. They think it's something that's going to replace them as employees, or, or let's automate your job so we could have less people working there, which is a genuine fear. And also on the other side of it, if you've never done automation, you don't know where to start, and it could be like a very scary topic of how do you get started with automation. And, like a lot of businesses are familiar with Zapier. That's like one tool that you could quickly kind of see like, oh, we could start simple. And if someone's not sure what automation is, or they feel kind of scary, you could start thinking, okay, like I want to automate this at my job. I'm not sure how to do it. What could I automate in my own life that would kind of help me to warm my feet, if you will, about like this whole process? So one of the things that I've done for me, I figured out a way to automate all my emails. So that way they automatically tag. So I could kind of get, oh, wow, like automation is not going to replace it, but it's actually going to help me be more useful at answering my emails. And then you could be like, okay, how could I take what I learned here and apply it at our company? And like I said, if anybody's looking for automation, there's definitely many tools. You don't have to feel like you're starting from scratch. And the two that I use, that's what I could like speak about them, is N8N, a phenomenal way to set up automation flows. And then for marketing and content, it's AirOps. They allow you to visually build different automation flows. And then if you need something specific, you could write either JavaScript or Python code for certain things. And what's awesome, to make it easier, they have a grid layout, like a table, where you could just add a list of all the different things. Like maybe it's a list of 10 articles you want to update it, and it will do it automatically. And then one of the cool things, just in general, any automation process, and this is something that's starting to become common, is they literally have a block says human in the loop, which is basically, okay, this is where a human needs to physically review and approve before the automation process could take the next step.
That sounds like a nice workflow. We will have to check it out.
Yeah, if you have any questions, yeah, definitely let us know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Who should be responsible in creating automations in a company? Like, you mentioned that you are doing automations for yourself. I can imagine that many people who want to save time should be looking into automations just to focus on the more important things. But company-wise, who should be responsible for this?
That's a good question. I think at Strapi we're a little bit unique. We are a smaller company, and we are, we try to kind of make our team as productive as possible. So it has to start from like the organizational level, from your CEO being like, hey, we need to embrace automation and AI. And there's got to be the support where, like, if you're going to take ownership or try something different, like, you have the support to do it. So I think it has to be an organizational decision. And if it's not, and you're working at a company and you're like, man, like, our company is not really doing any automation, it's like, do something for yourself and do like a presentation in your company where you could educate people about the value of automation, so you could get that process started. Where at our company, because it's literally coming from our CEO and our leadership being like, hey, AI is here, and if we don't learn to use it effectively, it's going to be very hard for us to stay efficient or compete with other people that kind of figured that flow out. And so my manager, Victor, we have our meetings weekly, and one of the things we ask is like, how are you using AI today, or what task do you think you could automate? So we have this open conversation, and then if something kind of jumps out and we're like, oh, this is actually a good use case, can you make a presentation and talk about it to educate our team? But for us, it starts from encouraging people to find things that you can automate, and it's not like a designated person. Because let's say I work at a marketing team, and then we have someone on support team, maybe I don't directly interact with them, but they should have the kind of capacity to be like, oh, we're embracing automation as a whole company. I have the freedom to come up with my own solution. So if you're making it available for everybody, you might find solution in places that you didn't think of.
Well, I'm curious, what is the most common use case you find when people come to you and they say, I want automation in my content management? What is the kind of business of position in the company that approaches this kind of topic?
So for us, this is something that's like case by case basis, and it's still like a fairly new topic. I mean, this is something we're decided to embrace first in Strapi, just in our own team, to kind of see how does automation help us. And then if customers come to us and ask and mention their different kind of requirements, we could say, hey, you could do this, you could do that. So I don't think we kind of, everybody that comes to us, hey, this is exactly what you should be doing. We leave that to the clients. Their requirements speak for themselves. And we have a very cool plugin ecosystem where if someone asks a request, and let's say it's something that's natively not done by Strapi, we're like, okay, maybe we could build a plugin to add this functionality into Strapi. So it's not like we're like, okay, everybody comes to us, here's how you automate content, here's what you do. I think every business requirements has different reasons for doing stuff. So it's something that we're still learning. We're not, enforcing our opinions on others, in terms of automation. But we are saying that if you want to be more efficient and get more done, we would definitely share our learnings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently came across this paradox related to automation and getting more things done. Sometimes people see automation as a mean to actually have more free time. You automate your work and then you have free time to spend with your family or kids or anything. But in reality, what we've seen lately is that you automate some things in order to get more done, and it actually results in a situation where part of the work is automated, but you have space to do more work. So you actually load your responsibilities, there's even more things you need to care about. And that's a kind of a paradox I've been hearing about, that we were thinking that automation is going to help us get more things done, but it's actually sometimes hurting us with so much stress because so many things are happening at once.
Yeah, and I think that's the double-edged sword, trying to figure out how much and when to do it. And so for us, the way we decide in Strapi, we use automation on our support team. We use it on our docs. For instance, we work with a company called Kappa AI, which helped us train a model based on our docs and create a chatbot that is like the first line of defense for folks to like find answers to their question that freed up some of the time from us answering the questions manually and support team being able to kind of gauge what type of questions people are asking. So for us, that was a time saver. We still help people. We have Monday through Friday open office hours, 12:30 p.m. CST, where people could come and actually ask us questions directly. But we were getting so many requests. It's like physically our team was not able to answer all the questions. So let's build an automation with Kappa AI and a chatbot, which is based on a doc. So when people ask the question, not only does it give them the answer, it shows them the resources of where the answer came from that helped us. And so to us, that kind of gave our support team more time to do more high value tasks. But to your point, Jan, there's still always going to be more work. So finding the balance is like really, really important.
I wanted to ask you, Paul, about some tips to implement automation for anyone who's listening, who's thinking, hey, I have a specific use case, I have a specific need, and I would like to implement content automation. When the time comes, what do you think are like the basics you should have in place? You told us to start small, for example, look for plugins before looking for a built-in solution.
Custom solution.
But at some point, you will have like a challenge and you will have to rethink it. What are the most common challenges in this process? What are your tips for starting out?
I think there's no like one easy answer that fits, because you need to not only understand like the manual process of what you're trying to automate and the different tools you're using, like for us we use AirOps or N8N, but you also have to have your domain knowledge for your business and know exactly what problem are you trying to solve. And so I think like the biggest tip I will give is like start small and test and make sure you have like a human in the loop of that automation process. But it is going to be very specific for you. And just like the tips I gave, if you haven't done any automation, think of something that you could automate like in your life that it gives you problems. So you're like, I wish this was easier. I wish this wasn't causing me as much stress and headaches. And then the second step is you figure out what that means in your company. I'll use an example. It's in beta now. We realized when people were using Strapi, one of the hardest things they had is how do you create your content types? How do you organize it? How do you represent your content? And we're like, oh, if that's very commonly asked question, and a lot of people trying to figure out what is the best practice, what's the best approach. Yes, we have the documentation. Yes, we have the open office hours where we could give help, but it's like, wouldn't it be nice if we could automate that process by having a chatbot that allows you to build your content types in Strapi much quicker using human language like English? Or wouldn't it be cool if you could just import your whole project for your front end that you're building, and it just automatically creates those content types, and you could review them and be like, hi, that's an actual pain point that our clients have. That would be a good feature. So we're like, oh, let's create that tool that automates that. So I think it's starting to figure out what are some of the frictions in your company or your application where adding automation or a AI-powered tool that helps to automate some of the process where the user doesn't have to manually do something. It's a great way to start. So don't just think about like your business, kind of like, my brain is frozen right now, but I'm using like business processes. I was thinking of a different word. Let's not try to figure out how to automate something in our business process. It might be something in your application for your customers. That's another like great place to find out. This is like one of the reasons, I like translation with Localazy. It helps me to automate part of the process I don't want to do, and that's kind of like what kind of helps, or use as your guide star to figure out what to start automating and where to start.
Yeah, definitely. I also wanted to ask about how does this affect localized content, multilingual content? Like, are you guys in Strapi experiencing requests from customers asking for automating multilingual content in multiple languages they have localized?
So that's a great question. And this is something that we're trying to start to do more of at Strapi. Like if you go to our website, you're going to notice that all of our articles are in English, and English, it's like, okay, most of the world speaks English, but it's not all of the world. And you are missing out. And sometimes you have your internalization where it's like, okay, it has to be available in the language, but then there's these cultural differences, all these things that are expressed differently in someone's native language. And if you had that native content, it would just be much more easier for people to consume it. And so for us, I think this is a very important part, especially with everything that's going on now with SEO. The friendlier you make your content to the end user, that able to experience it natively, the better it's going to be. So at Strapi, we are not only starting to experiment with like taking and trying to figure out what is the top 3 languages that we definitely should translate our content to have broader reach, and how to go about that for our own content on our website, but also thinking across like platform, like, well, maybe we should also do some translation for our YouTube videos, and how do we go about that? And so I think that's a very like important strategy for folks to consider, trying to kind of make sure that your content is friendly with everybody, regardless of what language they speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also a good SEO strategy. I'm not sure if you have seen the Reddit reports. They just started to automatically translate some of the posts or some of the subreddits there, and they had some pretty interesting reports on how that affects SEO like worldwide. If you haven't seen it, we will definitely link this report later in the podcast, because it's interesting to see, and it could encourage more people to actually try to experiment with localization and SEO.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like, one of the things that I kind of had an experience recently, I was traveling, I was in another country where I didn't speak that language. Even though I spoke English and some folks spoke English there, there's a meetup which had a lot of amazing people from all over the world. And I felt like I missed out on like learning very important, valuable lessons because I didn't speak the native language and there was no translator to help out. I felt cheated. I was like, man, like there's such a wealth of information that I just don't have access to because I don't speak the language. And I think it's why companies should consider translating their content. You know, you're going to make your information, the value that you bring to your community, much more accessible to the greater parts of the world, which I think is important. And this is why this is something we're starting to make an initiative to really focus on translating. And some people will be like, well, Paul, why didn't Strapi translate everything already? And one of the things with translation and localization is that there is a cost associated with, and then you also have to think about what is the return on investment, and you have to really think about strategically what you're doing, because all of this stuff takes time. And I think this is kind of going to be a net positive for automation tools. Before, translations was a very manual process. And you needed a lot of people that spoke the language, a lot of resources. So it was very expensive. But now with automation and, you know, things that you're doing, you're able to start slow and ramp up. And so now, like in today's world, like there's not that big of a gap of like, oh, should we localize our content or not? Should we translate or not? Because you could start doing by piece. But I think to your point, it's for SEO and being able to reach a greater audience, 100% is something that I think every company should consider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, honestly, the whole localization industry is still trying to figure out what to do with the whole advancement. But I can already see some promising, let's say, paths that will actually make all this possible, as you mentioned. Like, what you basically need is a lot of context, and then huge part of the manual work could be done automatically. Especially in the following years, it is going to be happening.
And the other thing that a lot of people maybe don't mention or think about, if you take on like translation, all of it internally on your team, that's something like you're responsible for. And so in certain cases, it does make sense to hire the company. That's what they're good at. This is what they do. And every company and project will have different kind of requirements, but this idea of being able to offset a workload where you don't have to worry about it because you have somebody else doing it for you, to me, that also like brings a lot of value. And this is like for instance, in Strapi, I can physically add all the different content. I could physically translate the content myself and add it there. But to me, it's like, that's taking my time. Why can't I find a tool that will allow me to speed that process up? Oh, wait, there's a Localazy plugin that actually allows you to automate part of that translation. Okay, let me do that. And then as your team grows, it's like maybe you have a lot of content, and maybe you have like the flow where you have automated translation, but you have native speakers who are reviewing the content to make sure that it matches like the cultural context and everything else, and then you update the translations accordingly. And so I think it's not just like one easy solution, but there's so many ways of doing it. I think starting and finding a reputable company, that's what they do, is a way to probably help yourself to save a lot of headaches from the start. For instance, we are a headless CMS. That's what we do, but we're not a digital asset management company. So I'm not going to go around like saying, this is how digital asset management works. That's not what we do. And so I think it's finding technologies. It could be, services. It could be companies. It could be, products that you find that specifically do one thing well that allows you to solve your need. For instance, translating your content. Definitely consider that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you say at the beginning, it's not a matter of just automating everything or just doing everything manual. You just have to find what you need. For example, in localization, there's more sensitive content and there's testing content, general content that can maybe be automated, and other parts can be just left to the specialists to translate and professionally review. So it's just a matter of finding the right spot for you and your company. And then it can be easy with the right tool. Yeah.
Are there automation flows that you're using in your organization at the moment, or is this something you're exploring?
I think we're still exploring. I don't know what Jan thinks about this, but he's the automations chief.
I would say the automations part in our company is kind of scattered. We're partially using Zapier to automate some things mainly because of the integrations it has. There's a lot of integrations, and I would say it's pretty comparable to NAN as it comes to capabilities. Then we're using a project management tool called Fibery. It's like a Notion alternative, and it has automations built in. So they have their own automations UI. And it allows us to automate like everything related to tasks, creating tasks, moving things around, even generating some like template content and things like that.
Yeah.
And this is already a huge help, but we're still kind of figuring out how to use AI automations more effectively, where it can save, especially the marketing's time.
Yeah, I feel like in my experience from the marketing point of view, I think one thing we've discovered while we were searching automations is that you have to have good data management. And we are also working on the data management part. You have to have like the right data to feed the automation so it can help you. So we are discovering that along the way. I feel that's the experience for me at least.
Yeah, especially the marketing part, because developers usually, they're used to do this, like developers always like were used to writing scripts, and every time they had to do like anything for the third time, they usually write a script to do it for them.
Exactly.
So it's all about the mindset.
Yeah, but I think like definitely I like how you are being very strategic, exploring things slowly and figuring out where is it best fit, because I think there is this hype that a lot of leaders in the industry talk about how automation is going to replace everything, and it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's these nuances that a lot of people don't see that you need to do in your business that's specific to your business, that by jumping into automation too quickly, you could wreck yourself really, really quickly and cause damage to your company, your brand, based on something that you didn't really think through. So I think like as much as value automation brings, and I'm very like optimistic to it, but also as a developer, like seeing how a lot of tools don't work as expected, and you do have to be very careful. You have to set like special, kind of guidelines. Okay, if this doesn't work, what's the backup? How do we handle this situation? And that's why I think any flow of automation, if someone says to me, I did this from start to finish without me doing anything, I'm like, you're doing automation wrong. In my opinion, I think you need to have human in the middle, and you need to guide the process, and you need to make the final decisions of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one challenge in our context is that we're still a startup, like we're still under 20 people, but growing. And the issue here, and the issue with similar sized companies, is that they're usually still figuring out how to work, their processes, their teams, etc. So the biggest danger here is that you might start automating the wrong things that are not settled yet. And that is a waste of time, because if you spend some time automating things that will change in the following months, that wasn't time well spent.
Yeah. And in the end, it can hurt your brand, as you said. You can be doing it wrong, and it can have you can give the wrong impression to your users in the end. So.
Yeah, and I like what you said. Around every company is different. Like, for instance, you're a smallest startup, you have different needs, different things to consider, and automating too early or not the right stuff will actually be a time waster and possibly cost a lot of money or loss of business or whatever it is. And to me, I think that is the trick, and the billion-dollar question is what to automate, or even should you automate things. And I think one of the things, because I also do stuff on YouTube, and if you read the conversation on YouTube, it's always somebody's like, AI, tomorrow, no jobs, everything is gone. Automation is like, I lost my job. And and so you see a lot of this kind of perception that people have. And I think one of the issues, I think it's educating people what automation and AI tools are actually capable of and being honest with them rather than feeding this hype cycle. You might be in an organization where you might be a very technical person, and then maybe one of your managers comes in. Maybe they're not as technical. Maybe they got really, really excited, and they say, today we're automating everything without really understanding what that means. And I think if you work at a company and where someone brings that to your attention, I think you should be okay to push back and be like, what does it actually mean? What is how are we going to accomplish this? What are our goals? What is, the ROI on this? So I think you need to kind of push back. I'm not saying everything is hype, but probably a lot. And I think it's okay to push back on the hype a little bit, so everybody in your organization has a clear idea of what that means. Because if someone says we could automate everything, to me that's a red flag. That means you don't understand you don't understand the process well enough to kind of know where things are not going to work. And I think that's a very important lesson. Do your due diligence, do your research. I know there's a lot of hype with AI and automation, and we use AI and automation, but you have to do it responsibly and do it within your business requirements.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're living in a high note here. I don't have anything else to add. We are out of time already, and this is the last episode of the season. So I'm taking this opportunity to say thank you to every guest that came in here. Thank you, Paul, for being here for the last episode. And of course, please check out our channel, our former episodes. And this is the end of season 2. So we hope to see you very soon. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
an
everybody.
exciting talk. Yeah.
Awesome.
If you like this episode, please follow our channel and add it to your favorites so you don't miss the next conversation. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube for updates and bonus content. Until next time, stay curious!